This is the 17th Marvel movie that's come out this year. Please, please be different. Thank heavens Black Panther is a different Marvel movie. I mean, not completely, but it kind of is. It's also directed by Ryan Coogler and stars Chadwick Boseman and Michael B. Jordan. And it follows, well, Black Panther. And I would just say it is a Marvel movie, and it kind of is to an extent. But luckily, there is enough different about it to actually make this one worth watching.
So I gotta start off by really praising the acting in this movie. Across the board, the performances are really good. But specifically, Chadwick Boseman and Michael B. Jordan did an incredible job with their characters. And the fact that this is the main hero of the movie and the main villain of the movie really benefits the movie as a whole. Chadwick Boseman plays a character that's going through a lot. At the same time, he's dealing with the loss of his father back in Civil War, and he has all of these new responsibilities thrust upon him as the King of Wakanda. So it's really cool to see him go through this emotional battle throughout the entire movie. It brings a depth to his character, and I thought that that was really interesting for a Marvel movie. Not to say that I hate Marvel movies. I just feel like there have been some heroes that haven't quite had a lot of depth. And so going into this movie, I was really interested to see where they were going to go with the character of Black Panther. And honestly, I feel like Chadwick Boseman really killed it. But I gotta say, Michael B. Jordan was the absolute standout for me. He plays what may be the best villain in the MCU. His character has such a interesting motive for why he does what he does. And he's one of those great villains that you can totally see his point of view and say, yeah, that makes sense. Your methods I kind of disagree with, but you know, he is able to give this interesting layered performance that I really liked. It was also really awesome to see Michael B. Jordan kill it in this villainous role, especially considering his last superhero movie. But yeah, I mentioned that across the board, the acting is really good in this movie, and it really is. There are quite a lot of big names in this movie. You've got Forrest Whitaker, Angela Bassett, Martin Freeman, and Andy Serkis, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Everyone does just such a great job, and I really liked seeing that in a comic book movie. Now, what both Chris and I really loved about this movie is that it is its own contained, standalone, enjoyable movie. You do not have to go into this knowing any of the other MCU movies. I mean, it helps to know the background from Civil War, but they do a great job explaining that and flashing back to it to show what our characters went through during that movie. I just thought that it was really nice to see a movie that didn't have all of these unnecessary connections to other MCU movies, unnecessary cameos that just did not need to be in there. It was a breath of fresh air, to be honest, to see this movie and just enjoy it for what it is. Not worry about how it connects to the expanded universe or anything. Now, there were definitely still some minor references to the MCU and to characters from other MCU movies. This is why I wanted to talk about Martin Freeman and Andy Serkis in this section of the review, because I love what they did with their characters here. I feel like there are a lot of other Marvel movies where a character from the MCU shows up and they're just there to be there for about 10 minutes and be like, hey, this is connected to all the other movies, and then they just disappear. And it's a scene that could have completely been deleted from the movie, but it's there because it's an MCU movie. In this movie, Martin Freeman's character from Civil War is a pretty big part of the story. And Andy Serkis' character from Age of Ultron is involved in kind of one of the conflicts that Black Panther has to deal with. So they're both utilized to the story's credit, and they give a lot of screen time to them. And I really appreciated that. I'm sick of a lot of these just random cameos that were really pointless. And the direction of this movie was phenomenal. It looked really beautiful. And the action scenes especially were really well shot, and they were entertaining, edge of your seat stuff. There's a car chase that I really enjoyed, and a lot of the hand-to-hand combat fight scenes were awesome. What I personally loved about the directing was the world building. Everything from the set design to the costumes, the way that characters spoke, it all just deeply immersed me in this culture of Wakanda, the nation that Black Panther is from. It honestly, I was so into this movie that afterwards I really wanted to read Black Panther comics just because I was so interested in the culture and history of Wakanda and the history of these characters. So, I mean, that's actually pretty rare for a comic book movie. And last but definitely not least, I wanted to mention the soundtrack of this movie. When I heard that the soundtrack was being produced by Kendrick Lamar, I couldn't have been more pumped. The songs on here are great, and the score is also really good.
So I'm going to get this off the table really quick. I hate Marvel movies. The Avengers was okay, but I feel like everything kind of around that, and then after that, it all just kind of blended into the same movie. And so going into the Black Panther, I was very skeptical. And I am very glad to say that I actually really did enjoy this movie. But unfortunately, there are a couple of flaws with it. So first and foremost, the worst part of this movie, my gosh, it's the humor. Every single time they tried to crack a joke in this movie, it fell so hard right on its face. I cringed up into a ball and wanted to die. Seriously, if you took every single joke out of this movie, I would have raised my score a full point because of how bad the humor was. So, like I said about the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I'm not super pumped on it. And the first act of this movie was kind of Marvel-y. I didn't love it. And by that, I mean there were a lot of generic plot points, a lot of build-up. Michael B. Jordan wasn't even really in the first act of this movie. I mean, he had one scene that was the best scene of the first act. But there was a lot that was just really boring. And, in particular, there was a car chase scene. And, I mean, thank heavens, they all had a nice brand new Lexus to drive around. I'm really glad that Lexus was so kind to really make that first part of the movie all about Lexus, and I love Lexus. So if you can't tell, the product placement in this movie was not overbearing like it was in the last Avengers movie, Age of Ultron, where they saved the world with a Samsung Galaxy tablet. But yeah, there was still some product placement. It was cringy. Not as bad as the humor, but it was still kind of cringy. All in all, though, the movie was very good, and these cons were, I mean, they were bad, but they are definitely not deal breakers. Alright guys, so I'm just going to go out there and say it. Black Panther is the best Marvel Cinematic Universe movie I've ever seen. That's not saying a lot, because I don't like MCU very much, but, it was a good movie. I appreciated it. I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10.
I don't know if I'd go with best MCU movie, but it's definitely one of the better ones. I'm going to also give it an 8 out of 10. Thanks so much for watching, guys. If you liked what you saw, leave a like and a subscribe. It really helps out the channel. If you didn't like what we had to say, leave a dislike and tell us why in the comments.